all got some little background about me. I am Monzer Kahf, and I was born in Damascus. Lived the first part of my life there, but most my life has been in America, and I am involved in writing and lecturing on Islamic economics. As a matter of fact, since 1960. The first paper I wrote was on zakah, comparing it with social security. I was in the second year of my university study in the University of Damascus. So the issue really is kind of part of my life all the way. I am originally from Damascus, Arab, Muslim, Alhamdulillah, and American also, because I lived most of my life in America. Now we have one little thing. In a few minutes, we need to make a break because of Maghrib prayer here in Istanbul. Now the Adhan has started. So after this little introduction, we'll break and start the first session after, maybe take 6-7 minutes for prayer only. For me, that may repeat also for next Sunday and couple of Sundays more. Later on, I may be able to pray at the end of the session. After the session is over, I may have time. So let me mention the little introduction here. That is, the course consists of 19 lectures, and I really appreciate that everyone will attend with attendance. I suppose by now everyone has on his file or her file the guidelines, and these guidelines are important. Those who did not read them yet, please read them and read them carefully. The homework is important part of the class. The homework, you have samples. I also send you, I suppose it is already uploaded, downloaded on your own device. And again, these are samples for the homework that you will do. The homework is due 48 hours after the class, maximum, that's the deadline. And also, it is 5 multiple choice questions. If you put none of the above or all the above, should be more than, in other words, after the 5 choices, you make 5 genuine, intelligent choices, and then none of them may be applicable, or one of them could be. So when it is none or all of them could be also, you add that none of the above or all the above should be the 6th or 7th, but not within the first 5. Again, 10 questions of true or false. You are required to mark the correct answer. And this I'll test you. I'll look at them, correct them, and send them back to you, so everyone will see his homework, how he or she did in it. I'll send them back to you. You email them to me on my email. I have 2 emails. Better use email to both of them, just to be sure that it arrives me on time. If you don't have my 2 emails, well, check, you find them on the internet, and Sister Hiba will be able to put them to you on the WhatsApp group, so you can have them. Now give me a few minutes to make my prayer, and we come back to discuss the first session in our discussion for this semester, inshallah. And inshallah, we'll make it all through in a very good time, and everyone will be pleased, you and me together. And remember that when I see you active in class, that encourages me really to give more and discuss more and so on. So uh, one thing I want you to excuse me for, I am not that smart in on the issues of online and in these devices. I learned how to use the computer at an old age, not like you guys when you were even 5 or 6, you started that. So I'm not so smart in it. I am not good in most of the things, but inshallah, I'll do something that will benefit. طيب, now excuse me for a few minutes. I leave everything open and get up for my Maghrib prayer. Assalamu alaikum. Ready?
Yes, I
Inshallah.
think everyone is ready.
طيب.
Yes, inshallah.
Bismillah. This is an introductory lecture today, really, but it is also an important issue. It has been a bit controversial in the literature, in the contemporary literature. Uh, Many people argue, and I am one of these who have this argument, that the Islamic finance really is founded on ownership, on a property theory. And we will discuss this matter today and see what does it mean, and where did it come from. Of course, we said Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim already, so we will pass this here. So when we ask ourselves the question, what is Islamic finance? It's an important question, but really the answer to it is in a way very simple, but also it has really a lot of implications. What we did in Islamic finance is we took contract from the commercial law as it is. Contracts that are known by all human beings. They have been doing them since day one. Sale, everybody knows what is sale, and everybody practices sale. Of course, sale slash purchase is the same. So sale contract is one of the finance contract that we take it from commercial law, as it is in commercial laws. We took also the contract of leasing. Leasing is renting a thing. It applies to human services, and it applies also to the usability, which is technically called usufruct of things that give services throughout time, have this what you call usability or usefulness, or it is technically called legally usufruct. So it is the price you give leasing and collect the rent of it, which is a price of this usufruct. Of course, it depends on the time element. So we took contract. The third kind of contract is sharing, creating any form of partnership, putting resources together, financial resources, and usually also human resources are put together. So these are the kind of contract that make the contracts of Islamic finance. So what we did, we took these three groups of contracts: lease, sale, and sharing, and financial institution, if you want to provide finance, you can only provide finance through sale or leasing or sharing. And if you want to collect funding from sources, from the savers, from those who have excess funds that they don't need them for the time, you want to collect them from them. Again, you collect them on one of these contracts, usually sharing. So what we did, we took these contracts, which are known by everybody and in all societies, and we made them the heart of finance. Well, is this an innovation? Really, it's not. It's is it Islamic? Doesn't everybody know sale on credit and lease and sharing? Yes, everybody knows that all over the world. And everybody knew that we were living before the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, and after him and during his time and all. So, what is Islamic about it? It is not Islamic, really. Islamic finance is not Islamic. I have an article under that title. Islamic finance is not Islamic. It is a human finance. Everybody knows it. But it's really an important change that we made, because before this attempt, which really started only 70 years ago, in the late, in the early 60s of the past century, 1961 or 62, 63 in Egypt, 62 in Malaysia. So we started in only 70 years ago, and uh, we got this system. Then but also when we say that you give financing on sale, on lease, and on sharing, it means one thing which is important, that you have to own before you can sell, and you have to own before you can lease. And when you give financial resources on sharing basis, you become partial owner, you own equity. So it's equity then financing, either sale or lease or equity financing. All of them imply that you have to own a property. Now, what property? A property that can generate added value. There can't be Islamic finance that is intended to make profit without owning a property, but a property that can generate additional value by its nature. If I own, say, a bottle of orange juice, I may be able to sell it to someone who likes it at a price more than what it cost me. So I make addition, I create added value. So that we need then a, the kind of property that creates added value. This is very important, and this is really the name of the game of Islamic finance. Let's see, how do I go forward from here? Okay. It means also that giving cash the cash does not generate added value. When you give a loan, how do you put in your balance sheet for you, those of you who have studied some accounting? Giving a loan, giving cash in the form as a loan, it only transfers ownership. But this transaction, the transaction that is called lending or borrowing, lending slash borrowing, lender slash creditor, uh, does not generate any added value. In your balance sheet, instead, in place of the cash item that you have as liquid, you will have instead the name of the person as debtor, receivables, or borrower. So it is, and it will be the same amount as a matter of fact, because cash or a loan contract transfers ownership but does not create added value. If you want, uh, by its nature, we will look at it why. But before that, what we did, in fact, in Islamic finance, we said we redefined finance. What is finance? Is not only giving cash. In creating corporations or partnerships or companies, we give cash, but we give cash to become partial owner here. So we own equity in it. Yes, this is a form. Otherwise, in sale and in leasing, we don't give cash, we give a commodity. We give a bicycle or a car or an apartment or a house. We give a thing, not really credit, but we give it and the payment of it will come later. Now, let me dwell on this point for a little bit, a little while only. When I give a loan, I have, instead of the cash that was in my pocket on hand, I have instead the debtor's name as debt or borrower. Now, it means a loan creates debt. Does the debt, it means when I give a loan, I am transforming my cash into a debt. Instead of owning the cash, I own now a debt. And of course, the borrower owns the cash. And he owes me a liability in his own balance sheet, in his own accounting system, will be a liability to me. He is under debt to me. But now, this debt, does the debt generate any added value? This is an important question, which really questions the conventional wisdom. It's kind of striking. Everybody in New York think that, okay, if I give a loan, I got interest on it. But where does the interest come from? Is it generated by the debt? Let me tell you this story. There used to be a professor, and he's really the founder of what is called mathematical economics. Paul Samuelson used to teach in Harvard. Paul Samuelson in MIT. Paul Samuelson was an economist. His wife was uh, a pharmacist, as a matter of fact. And he used to say very often in his lectures that economics is what can be understood by any person who is not specialized. If my wife doesn't understand it, it is not economics. Now, I want to take this kind of statement. Did you see, to come to the layman in the street and who has no background whatsoever of anything? Have you ever seen a debt carrying a baby debt or giving birth to a baby debt, like a cow gives birth to a baby cow, or a debt generating benefit? Have you ever seen a person putting debt on his shoulder and getting it in winter to warm his body with it? Like I wear this sweater to warm my body, or taking a debt as an umbrella and walking under the rain, and that protects that person from the rain when he walks in the street, or she. So a debt, in fact, is a kind of mute asset. It's a property, yes, of course, it is an asset, but it is a mute asset, does not generate any additional income. And if we make an experiment, suppose we 17 people in this class, each one of us gives the other one, and we have, say, $100. I give the next person to me, I give him the $100 as a loan. And I make a condition that he should give me back after a year 120 or 107, increment of 7%. Then the same, he uses this $100 to give it a loan to the next person. And again, with that same condition, with interest, and the next, and the next. The last one, the person number 16, will come back to me and give it to me as a loan with interest. But where does the interest come from? It doesn't come. It's not created. It does not exist really. Each one of us owes the other 107 as interest. But where does the interest come from? We did not produce that. This is unlike sale. Sale, as known in economics, sale generates added value, because to you, the bottle of orange juice is worth 11, but to me, it was worth only 10. So it generates added value because we benefit from things in different ways, in different kind of joy. So our benefit varies, not exactly the same, and that's what creates additional value in sale, whereas in loan, we do not create additional value. So here, when we say you can only practice financing through sale, or through leasing, or through creating a function, creating a company that produces goods and services, and be able to sell these goods and services at more than the cost, that generates again added value. So when the Quran says that riba, interest, is zulm, exploitation, the first zulm is really zulm of the reality. In reality, there was no increment. As in the example of the 17 of us, each one of us, his sole business is to give a loan to the other. And we all gave loan to each other, but the 7 that we claimed has to be paid has not been generated. We reach the end and we find that we still have only 100. Well, that's against the wisdom on whose basis Wall Street work. Yeah, well, yes, it is against it, but it is the plain truth. It is the plain reality. the exploitation, the dhulm that is in interest it is because there's no generation of additional amount. How come you claim an additional amount? Earning without producing, earning without owning a value adding property. If I own a value adding property whose nature, like a bottle of orange juice, or like a computer or a table or a chair, when I sell you that, well, that generate benefits to you that if I am able to sell it at higher than cost, you are willing to pay me $11 for it, and my cost was 10. I have generated by the sale contract, which transfers ownership of the table to you, and you give me the price. I generated by this sale a value added of certain amount. So to you, it is more valued than it was to me. This is the idea then, which is a real idea in real life. And this is how uh, additional value is generated. When I give you, say, a car for a month, and you pay me $1,000 for it for that month, you are extracting benefit from the car, and at the end of the month you return the car as it is. Whatever depreciation is irrelevant, is not applicable here. I only included it into the 1,000. I thought, okay, the car will have some wear and tear during this month of only $200, for instance, but I gain really full $800, which is the price of the usability of the car for the month. So I give you here really the car that you use and its usability. Its usability is a benefit you get, and you pay me its price. So the point here that interest on the $100 between us, that we shuffled it from one person to another on the basis of lending, has not been generated. And in reality, at the end, we find the $100 is still as it is. So the loan contract creates debt, and the debt does not create baby debt. If you own a cow, it may generate a baby cow, or generate milk, or becomes fatter and generate more meat and more fat in it, if it is for slaughtering and eating. So this is here a very important thing. Although, notice, the lender bears a risk. So it's not the risk that matters. What matters is owning a property whose nature is makes it, or is that it may create or generate additional value. If I own a chair and sell it for a higher price than the cost, then that generates additional value. Let's go to the next point. What matters then is owning a property, and Islamic finance is based on that principle. We take an Islamic financial institution, say an Islamic bank. If it is going to finance a customer who wants to buy a car, they have to buy that car that was chosen by the customer. They have to buy it and sell it to the customer on credit. If they can use leasing, say for residents, they have to buy it and lease it. Along with the lease, we may add other conditions, which is lease and buy slowly, buy at pieces. So along with each lease payment, you pay an additional amount to buy part of the apartment, say, or the house. By buying part of the house, of course, you pay rent only on the remainder that is owned by the financial institution. So this is a kind of financing that at the end of it you own. But leasing doesn't have to end with ownership. It may or may not end with ownership. So what matters is to own a property. Of course, when you own a property, say a bottle, a glass bottle or a glass cup, isn't there a risk in owning a property? Yes, of course. The main risk of it is the risk of destruction. If it fell down from my hand and broke, who will be the loser? I'll be the loser. I lose it. So I bear what we call ownership risk. If I sell it on finance, I have to buy it first, and in the time between buying it and selling it, this time may be 1 hour or it may be 200 days, whatever it is. During this time, I bear all the risk of that property that I bought. Now, this is then when I finance through sale or through leasing or through sharing, owning part of the company or part of the enterprise. Suppose the enterprise is a restaurant or could be a factory to produce computer chips. Whatever it is, definitely there is risk in it. Ownership always entails the risk, which we call it risk of ownership, property risk or ownership risk. And at the same time, if you own a thing and sell it, you are entitled to all what the price of the sale that you get from it, including the profit. So again, you are entitled to any increment that is generated by that asset. When you own a land and that piece of land has grass in it, and it came naturally just from rain, from God. You didn't plant anything. Who owns the grass? The owner of the land. In other words, risk and entitlement. These are two characteristics of ownership. You own a property, you are exposed to the property risk. You are entitled to any increment that may happen in that property. Entitlement and risk are two facets of property ownership. Okay? So, the property theory of Islamic finance says that neither price risk nor liquidity risk nor credit risk entitle you to get any increment. It's only ownership, and ownership implies ownership risk. Not the ownership risk that creates the entitlement. It is another characteristic, another facet really of the ownership itself. You are entitled to the return and you are exposed to the ownership risk. Now, ownership risk can be depend on the time of ownership. You may own it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 10 hour, for 100 hour, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. What matters is to be exposed to ownership risk. Okay. So, what justifies earning is the creation or the existence, even without your effort, as in the case of the grass on the owned land. You own the increment because it exists naturally, because of natural phenomenon. But this is an increment above the land, an added value in what you own, or it is created by what you own, by the property that you own. This is what justifies earning in finance. Of course, if you are a laborer and sell your service against a wage, you earn a wage. But here we are talking about finance. The theory then on which Islamic finance is founded is an ownership theory, a property theory. You have to own a property, and that property must be characterized that it is able to generate additional value. An increment could be physical, as if you own a cow, will be physical, or it could be conceptual, like usufruct. You cannot hold in your hand usufruct. It is the usability of an asset. So all that entitle you, if you own such kind of property, you are then entitled to any increment. It is not the issue of risk that generate the entitlement to the return. It's rather the ownership, and the ownership has always ownership risk. And this is definitely taken from the objectives of Sharia, usually called the maqasid of Sharia, maqasid al-Sharia, and also the individual text of the Quran and the Sunnah. In clear way, we can derive this principle, and this principle is very important then in Islam. We are then talking about a new theory of finance, not like what you find on the internet. On the internet, you will always find that Islamic finance is based on risk sharing. No, that's incorrect. Okay, so Islamic finance is based on owning a property, and it also, in fact, this theory applies in other areas of Islamic economics. We will come to that and try to discuss it a little bit, although it's off our main subject in finance. Entitlement for return is caused by ownership of a value adding property, not by risk or risk sharing. This is a general theory in Islamic economics, not only in finance, and it applies all through. It applies in the theory of economic value. The Islamic economics value is created not by labor alone, as the communists say, it is by both labor and property. You may have a property and you don't do any labor, like in the example of grass coming out on in your land, and you own the additional value. Or it may be also by labor. So both labor and property create value. Okay. Now, So it applies in the value theory. The Islamic value theory is based on this principle that both property and labor create additional value. It applies in the theory of production. Who deserves the increment in the theory of the firm? Definitely the owner of the firm. The owner of the firm may not own the capital, may not own the labor, may not own the natural resources, the land, and may not own the skill of entrepreneur or skill of the organizer of the enterprise. But he owns the enterprise. He or she owns the enterprise that is enough to deserve the increment. After you buy the services of other factors of production, the remainder is owned by, or the owner is entitled to own the increment by the owner of the project. It applies in the theory of distribution, in the determination of incomes of different units in the economy. It applies also in the Islamic theory of development, and it applies, of course, in social finance. For instance, in social finance, when you own, because you own, you are required to pay zakah simply because you own. Ownership is the fundamental condition for the payment of zakah, and also ownership is a fundamental condition for creating an endowment, a waqf. You cannot create waqf of things that you don't own. You have first to assure us to prove your ownership of that thing, and then you can create that thing as a waqf for any social or benevolent objective. So this theory of ownership really goes all the way through. It gives me important 4 axioms. These 4 axioms are very important. In fact, they are derived simply from the fact that Islamic finance is based on lease, which means also ownership, on sale, which means also ownership, or on creating companies or expanding companies, partnerships, corporations, etc., to produce goods and services for sale. So all these ways, they have behind them the ownership, of course, but uh, these this theory, we derive from it these 4 very important axioms of Islamic finance. Earning by owning. In finance, you cannot earn without owning. Condition first, number 1, that you have to own in order to earn in finance. Financial assets are mere representation. They are not true. They are only like a veil. They are only like a see-through. We don't look at them at all. We don't even recognize them. What is a financial asset? For instance, have you heard of the word commercial paper? I suppose all of you must have studied a course in finance and a course in economics. So you know what is commercial paper. Commercial paper is a paper, all it says is IOU, and you go and sell it in the market, and it is traded in the money market in New York. So what is the commercial paper? It represents a debt. I owe so and so a debt of this amount, and it is due for payment on such and such date. This is what a commercial paper says. If it's not a commercial paper, a bill of exchange, what it is also a debt. How about a corporate bond? A corporate bond is also a debt. How about a treasury bond? Oh, treasury bond is a debt on the government. Okay, it is also a debt. So we apply on all these the ruling that apply to debt. So for us, they are all debts. We don't worry really what you call it. It doesn't matter. So if it is a debt, then if it represents a debt, then it is only a debt. Now, if I own a share in Microsoft, I own part. Suppose there are 20 million shares in the market. I own 1 over 20 million of the company. And even I have a voting right there. If I want to vote, I can vote for it in the General Assembly. I own part of equipment and ideas and ventures and several machines and so on, etc., etc., inventory, debts on others, cash in the vault, and so on. I own, or in the bank, I own part of all that, 1 over 20 million of all that. So I own real things. This is not a debt. I own real things that generate value. They generate value. Microsoft sells its product, whatever they are. So a share then is a real property, real value adding property. Whereas a bond is simply a debt, does not generate any added value. We apply the same rule to it. The third axiom is realism. Realism means that we look at the reality as it is. We don't make any additional assumption. Look at a loan contract. You give a loan for interest 7% per annum. Where does the 7% come from? It really presumed. We got it from the air. We got it from, oh, people do this, but has no base. It is not generated by the $100 that I gave it to you. Now, when you, as a borrower, you use what you become owner of now. The $100 as a borrower, you own the $100. So you use it the way you like, and it's none of my business to interfere of the way you use it. You may use it for consumption, and really it did not generate any added value. You bought apple with it, or bought clothes for your children, and you got them there. It's consumed already. Or you may use it for production as part of production. Suppose you buy with the $100 some orange juice and sell it for 115. So you earn. Now, this earning that you made is owned by whom? Who owns the $100? You. Who owns the orange juice when you bought it? It's you. Who owns the value of 120 after you sold all the orange juice? It's you. So how come I can claim part of it? It's not, my property does not increase. My property is a debt, and the debt does not generate a baby debt by its nature. It needs an additional assumption. We got it from the air and added to the contract. It's not really generated by it. So this is that is realism. We'll come to a little bit of more details on this. Also, the moral commitment is the fourth axiom. These four axioms are extremely important. They'll come to us all over the course. So please remember them, memorize them really, like you memorize Surah Al-Fatiha. To make prayer, you need to memorize Surah Al-Fatiha. And to know Islamic finance, You need to memorize these axioms, these four axioms. The principle you earn by owning. Financial assets are only representations. We look through them. We don't care about what you call them, whatever they are. We look through them. What do they represent? Everything must be real as it happens in real life on the ground. We don't make assumptions. And the moral commitment. The moral commitment is interesting. We'll come to it anyway, but let me say one word on it now because it's important. We have a rule in Sharia, and this is, يعني, it came from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and of course, it is revelation from God. The rule says that if you, which is mentioned in the Quran, يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس. If you own a thing whose harm is more than its benefit, you have to destroy it. You cannot sell it to anybody, even to your enemy. You cannot sell it to your enemy. Literally, even to your, arch enemy, you cannot sell it to him or to her. You have to destroy it because it's harmful, because it does not create any benefit to any human being. Rather, it hurts. So this is the moral commitment is very important in Islamic finance. Islamic finance cannot own a thing that is harmful, like liquor. Now it is established by the American Medical Association and by the International Health Organization that the only quantity of liquor that is not harmful is zero, this round zero. And the round zero was invented by the by Muslims, by what's his name, Al-Khawarizmi. Okay, before Al-Khawarizmi, people did not know the concept of zero. And the concept of zero is rounded because it doesn't have any angle. He goes by angles. He went, invented the numbers by the angles. Number one has one angle. Number two has two angles. Zero has no angles at all. So this is zero, and it is zero benefit from if liquor. The only non-harmful quantity is zero, and that is well established and gone. يعني well done. If an Islamic financial institutions owns a quantity of liquor, it cannot sell it, and it will have to lose the amount that it paid for it. It has to be destroyed completely. And by the way, as same thing is established scientifically about tobacco, about cigarette smoking or using tobacco for sniffing or for chewing. Uh, Excuse me for a moment. I got the reminder for a tablet I have to take. So moral commitment means that literally the Islamic financial institution cannot own anything that is harmful, scientifically established harmful. Tobacco is equal now, from our point of view in Islamic finance, equal to liquor because it is established finally, that it is harmful to human cells, to human body. So any quantity of tobacco cannot be, and there has never happened. I've been watching, studying, visiting, going for a bit over than 50 years, Islamic financial institutions, and I work with them. I have never heard of anyone financing tobacco from its planting until its consumption. No financing of tobacco, and of course, no financing of liquor. So let's go. Okay, there are conditions, though, that are derived from what the discussion we have so far. Conditions of earning a return by owning in Islamic finance. The necessary condition, owning a property. Could be goods, could be an asset machine that produces things. I own a Xerox machine and I rent it to people to use it. But there are sufficient conditions. The property must be able to generate increment. So a value adding property, not any property. And it must be also, there must be actual addition created, actual additional value created, and the property must be morally acceptable, must pass the moral test. Just excuse me one moment, please. Now, financial securities are only representation of what is behind them, of the underlying uh, real thing that is behind them, whatever they are. They are themselves not assets. We always look at what do they represent and apply the rules of what they represent. Again, come back to the axiom of realism. In Islamic finance, realism is a basic ethical value, a basic ethical principle, really. One may earn return only if there is a real increment created, and one may not earn return if there is no additional wealth created. Of course, it applies to conditions and structures of the finance contract. There cannot be conditions in the finance contract that is not real, not realistic. And it applies to the assets. You cannot buy, for instance, all of you know what is X-ray. X-ray that is used in hospitals and in entering certain secured area. You pass through the X-ray passage. We know that. But how about if I want to sell you N-ray? You know, there is an N-ray, and I may sell you elements or units or part or anything of N-ray. Would you buy it? What is N-ray? Oh, N-ray is something that is very useful when you, it makes you cough less when you have cough, and so on. So I may give you a big story about it that, it is invented through a complexity of computers of huge capabilities, and we used in it a lot of electricity also. We used and all that. So it is very something that is great. Uh, you cannot buy it really because it's not really serious. Let me give you another example, which is unfortunately today in the market of New York and in many other markets is being traded. The index. What is the index? The index is a calculation average, some way of weighted average of prices of a number of shares. Dow Jones Index is the weighted average of the prices of 30 shares that is selected very carefully, that represents all the sectors in the market in with the appropriate weight for each sector also. So, but what is the unit of of the index? The index now is say 35,720. I sell you 10 units of it. What do these 10 units do? What are they? They are really nothing. They are computer calculated. So it's nothing. What is it? This is not sellable. That violates the principle of the realism. You cannot sell or buy uh, indices. You cannot sell or buy options. What are the options? The option is if I buy an option, say for IBM share, I buy an option to, I have the right, I buy the right for $2 of buying 1,000 share of a $2 per share, say, 1,000 share of IBM for $165 a share. And now the during or after 3 months, and now the value of the share is 158. So I put the price 165, and just to be on the safe side. So I bought that. I pay $202 only per share now. So I pay $2,000, and I own this right. Do I own any part of the IBM company, of the machines, of the inventory, of the ideas there, of the computer programs that it creates and it sells, and so on and so forth? I don't. All I own is this right, which we created in order to deal with it simpler, better than paying 158 to own the share. Now you own the right to buy a share. Your objective is only to make profit, really, not to contribute to the economy. And your objective is if the share becomes 165, so you earn $7 per share. Why paying 158 to own a property that generates increment? You just own the option, which we created to facilitate the transaction and makes it easier. So you buy the option only and pay $2,000 only, instead of paying $158,000. So which is easier? Of course, it's a lot easier. And all my objective is to gain this expected, say, $7 per share. But Mr. Here, you did not own a property that generates additional value. So your option does not create additional value. If you own the share, you own part of it, part of so the production of the company, you gain from it. But here you don't gain from the production of the company at all. It is not a property that you can earn through. In other words, it is really a fact. Yes, in Islamic finance, we apply it to the assets, to the goods, to the services, to everything. Realism, the principle of realism, and we apply it to the structure also of the contract. There are many implications, very important implications. We remove from Islamic finance all objects that do not produce real wealth from the financial transactions. Take a transaction, gambling. Okay, go to Las Vegas and gamble. In gambling, Do you create any additional wealth? No. I mean, there will be losers and winners, but there is no additional wealth really created. Gambling is not acceptable. And similar to gambling, there are many other things that are similar to gambling. Also, they are problem. Okay. Uh, debt. Does that generate a baby debt, or does it give milk like the cow, or grows fatter? No, really. It requires additional external thing to do that. So that is not cannot be a basis of Islamic finance. We may create a debt, but once it is created, you stick with it until you collect it. You cannot, for instance, sell it to somebody else. Uh, Virtual assets, options, indices. There is a contract called contract for the difference. Again, is not permissible in Sharia. We don't do it. Contract for the difference is a contract. Assume I am a buyer and you are a seller. So we agree. The price today is I bought say 1,000 share from you. The price of that share today is $50. And if a month from now we buy it, contract for the difference, say for a month or 3 months, after 3 months, if the price of that share becomes 60, I assumed a position of being a buyer. You give me 10 shares for each of the shares I bought. I bought 1,000 shares, so you pay me 100,000, 10,000. If the price goes to 145, I pay you 5,000. But I didn't buy the share and you didn't sell the share. We only pretend being buyer and seller. That is the contract for the difference. And I pay you or you pay me some, say, 10 cents per share as a price of this contract for the difference. Again, it's not permissible, all these. We remove all transactions that do not produce real wealth from the arena of finance transactions. There will be no finance on the basis of these transactions. Zero sum transactions. Gambling is an example, but speculation is also another example, really. When you own a share, even for shares, even for potato and tomato, speculation, you buy the thing, but you don't want the thing. You only speculate on its price. That is not acceptable in Islamic finance. Pure cash transactions. If I want, I need some cash, suppose to give as a gift to my friend, and for that cash, I buy, say, a watch for on credit for $100 and sell it cash for $90 or 98 to get the cash. I bought a watch and I sold this watch, which was not intended really. I didn't need a watch. I didn't want a watch. I wanted the cash. So my intention is to get the $98, not really the watch. And that makes it again pure cash transactions. And I become under a debt because I bought it on credit, under a debt of say 100 and I got 98. So these transactions are all not permissible in our Sharia. The moral screening, we talked about it, and the Islamic finance is committed to morally screen all activities, goods, services, and assets. Activities, transactions, and assets, all of them have to be moral. Give you a little example, for instance, for transactions. Rent is a price of the usability of a thing. In car rental in America, there is a clause called closing the gap clause. If an accident happened and the car is totaled, and it happened at that moment that the amount that the insurance pays is less than the balance that remains on you to the car dealer. You took it on lease. And if it is less than the balance, you are required to continue paying rent in order to close that gap, in order to make the amount paid by the insurance equal to the remaining balance to the car dealer. This clause is not permissible in Sharia because you are paying rent and there is no usufruct. The rent is the price of the usufruct. If you sell me an apple, I pay its price. But you don't give me the apple and you claim selling me the apple and you want the price, it doesn't work. So in Islamic finance, such a clause cannot exist in any Islamic lease contract. Let's go further now. How do we? Okay, here. Okay. Right. Now, we want to discuss, and we will close, inshallah, by that. We want to discuss in the remainder of this. We have still 4 slides. We want to discuss the implications of these axiomatic principles. These 4 principles that I told you, please memorize them like you memorize Al-Fatiha. Okay. Now, uh, what do they change in the world? And let's assume we adopt them. Islamic finance is not only for Muslims, it's for everybody, for the world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the messenger Muhammad and all messengers really as rahmatan lil alameen. It's a mercy for all human beings. So definitely Islamic finance is good for all human beings. We will discuss that later anyway. But let's look at the implications once Islamic finance is applied. 1, it integrates finance activity with wealth creating activities. In other words, you have to buy and sell. And this is a market. This is a real market activity. And this is the activity that creates additional wealth. So we make the finance part of this activity. We don't keep it aloof from it, separate, alone, on the side. You see, I studied economics and I studied finance. I got my PhD in 1975. None of you was born, okay? And in all my study, we did not really need to study corporate finance, for instance. We did not. We had a course of banking and finance in my PhD program, but we really didn't go because finance is on the side. Finance is not a market activity. It has its own market on the side. So in Islamic finance, no, we integrate, we make the financial institution and the financial sector part of the real market. If you want to earn any return in Islamic finance, the financial institution has to buy from the market and sells in the market. Yes, it arranges it in a way that is financial. We will discuss that later. Number two, stick always to the real market. Notice, there cannot be finance without a sale with it. In other words, a commodity should come from the shelf of the supplier, come to the bank, and goes to the customer. Without that, that cannot be come to the ownership of the bank, not physically necessarily comes to the bank. Bank doesn't have storage to put it anyway, so it doesn't come physically to the bank, but it comes to the ownership of the bank, and then it goes to the ownership of the customer. Sticks always to the real market. It eliminates all non-productive activities. One of them clearly is debt and debt discounting and debt transfer. Now, I want to ask you, please, a question. Not ask you, really, I'm going to ask myself and then leave it to your understanding. If I am under a debt to X, and this debt, X transferred the debt to Y, or I transfer the debt to L. So L becomes the debtor instead of me, or Y becomes the creditor instead of X. Now, does that change anything in the wealth in the economy, in the GDP? It does not. So how come we claim there ought to be a difference paid? Where does it come from? This debt discounting, earning from debt transfer, securitizing debt and selling them in the market and earn from that. How come? It cannot be. Buying and selling debt cannot be. Long time ago, I mean by long time ago, more than 25 years ago, I read a report about American banks. And in that report, it says that 10 out of each $11 transacted in American banks are interbank transactions. And the 11th is financing to individuals and corporations. The other 10 are interbank transactions only. These are huge transactions. Why do we do them? What is the economic benefit from them? There is no economic benefit. They are all transfers of debt. So all this is eliminated. They do not, all activities that do not create added value are eliminated. Establish fairness. Is it not fair to say that if you want to earn, you have to own? You own a thing and you earn the increment that happens, that is created, that is generated in that thing. And if you don't own a thing, you don't earn. That's fairness. That's real justice, economic justice. We do not pull resources from real market. Rather, we send resources, number 6, to the real market. Let's take this thing. How many people deal with options today in the world? And people who work on the transactions of options definitely in hundreds of thousands. How much fund, we will see it tomorrow or next week or the week after, we will see how much funds are used in options alone. A huge amount. Approximately, now I'm taking it from my mind, but it'll come to us next week or the week after. We will notice that the total GDP, gross domestic product of the whole world, is around $100 trillion, plus minus. And the amount of options that are traded in all the world market today is at least 12 times that much, at least 1200 trillion dollar. Now, if we eliminate options, options become zero. People who trade them as people and investors who invest in them as investors, what do they do with their money? They will have to go and work in the real market. And if they work in the real market, they will produce computers and food and clothing and housing, etc. Why do we have poverty in the world? Because a lot of resources today in the world are used in nonsense instead of being used in producing goods and services that benefit a human being. They are used in transferring wealth from one from the other. This is what options and all futures do. Trading futures. They do not create added value at all. And yet, huge resources are used in them. Instead, we tell all these people who work in them and all the funds that are invested in them, go in and invest. The only way you can invest is the real market, producing tables and food and computers and clothing and housing, etc. And definitely then resources will be rendered to the real market. Any of you have heard about the what happened in China some 50 years ago or more, at the time of Mao Zedong, what is used to be called the Cultural Revolution, that they got many people who were with the neckties and working in offices, go and work in agriculture, produce wheat for us. We don't want you to sit in offices and like the Turks call it, be effendi, be a big guy with white, clean color shirts and neckties. We go. We want you to work in the that was the cultural revolution at that time. At the time of Mao Zedong, we need a kind of financial cultural revolution to eliminate these speculative tools like options and similar, and instead produce real goods and services. The next, number 7, it is necessarily developmental. There cannot be any single Islamic finance transaction that is not associated with goods or services going from one hand to another, from the supplier, from the shelves of the supplier to a customer or to a company, or creating new productive capability by creating new enterprise or expanding an existing enterprise through sharing, through partnerships. So because Islamic financial transaction can only be transferring goods from one hand to another, or increasing the productive capacity of the economy. So definitely Islamic finance is developmental. Even when we finance customers to buy a new fancy car, even that gives the signal in the market, produce another car because your car is being accepted, taken in the market. It is also environmental and society friendly, both by our moral commitment. Hurting the environment is like hurting what is called in our Sharia al-fasad fil ard. It's like hurting people. So both are not. Our moral commitment is excellent, really, and in being socially and environmentally friendly. The next one, we implant a standard of hard earning in finance. No easy buck by just clicking, speculation by just clicking and running after price change, and and making profit of that. It is not acceptable. All that is not acceptable in Sharia. We were in a meeting some maybe now about 10 years ago, but definitely يعني, yeah, in Doha it happened to be that myself and Rodney Wilson, professor of economics in UK, now retired, probably he's an old man also. He's I hope he is still alive anyway, but he is retired. Used to be professor uh, in one of the universities in central UK. Now I forgot the name. Uh, and some other Islamic economics and Islamic finance professor. We had a meeting in Doha with that gentleman. What's his name? That the one who died recently, the big speculator. And we told them speculation is not acceptable, and all transactions that have zero sum are not acceptable in our Islamic finance, in our religion. And so he said, I am a speculator. We told him, then you are a wrongdoer. In fact, it's not to the benefit of humanity what you are doing. You may earn, but you are not really producing additional value. You are transferring wealth from one person to another. I'll remember his name. It just slipped my mind now. But anyway, he's the big speculator who was really the reason for the crisis of 1991 in Southeast Asia. Any one of you may remember his name? He died a couple of years ago. Okay. So we implant a standard of hard working. If you want to earn, you have to own a real property and sell it, or lease it, or create a new project, a new enterprise, or expand an existing one. Without these, you cannot earn. By simply clicking and watching prices, you are not able to earn. Not in Islamic finance. We exclude objects that do not produce real value. That's virtual objects. Recently, I was involved part of a Sharia opinion of a group that gave Sharia opinion about Bitcoin and other virtual currencies. And our conclusion was that these are not currencies except the one that has a given name. Now I forgot the name, that represent real currencies that are deposited with a depositee, except that all other virtual currencies are not acceptable as money in Sharia, because they lack the conditions required for money, and they are also not acceptable as, sorry, uh, not acceptable as uh, not money, as asset to invest in. So you cannot buy it. In fact, yes, the fatwa that came, the Sharia opinion that came from that group, that it is these virtual money, or they call it the virtual currencies, they are neither money because they don't fulfill the conditions required for money, nor assets that generate additional value. Assets that generate additional values are like share of a company that produces things that are beneficial, like Microsoft or Exxon or IBM, for instance, but not others. Uh, okay, so the next one, uh, so debt and virtual asset are excluded. We exclude transactions that do not produce real wealth, zero sum transactions, gambling, speculative contracts, pure cash activities, where goods are not intended for themselves. All these are excluded. The next here is number 12. Uh, we plug in an intrinsic moral screen, because in Islamic finance you have to own. You cannot own a thing that is harmful, that is not moral. By the way, the morality criteria in Islam is science. Once a thing is confirmed as harmful by scientists only, not by imams of mosque. It's not determined by imams of mosque. It's by science. So the medical science confirmed that tobacco is harmful. So tobacco is not an object of Islamic finance because it is harmful. And it is, in fact, from Sharia point of view, it's not permissible to use in any way. We apply scientific rule in weighing benefit and harms. As the Quran says, وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. So this is a scientific weighing of the harm and benefit. And that's what is applied in Islamic finance. We bear ownership risk. If you earn, you should bear ownership risk. If you don't bear ownership risk, your ownership is not completed. It has to be full, complete, and 100% ownership of what you own. Number 15, Islamic banks can lien on partners. Islamic bank, when they take deposits from savers, they take them on the basis of profit sharing. So on the basis of a sharing contract. They are not committed to a predetermined interest. Conventional banks, when they take deposit, they are committed to a predetermined, at the time of the contract, rate of interest. And they have to pay the rate of interest as it is. Islamic banks are not required. If it happens that for some reason the profit was low, they distribute low return to depositors. If the profit is high, they distribute high return to depositors. So they can lean on them in bad times. That is the meaning of it. They don't need to declare bankruptcy like what the Universal Bank in the Silicon Valley did, because it was committed to a predetermined interest and it had to pay that interest, and the return wasn't adequate enough. So the result was bankruptcy. Number 16, it integrates market discipline in the market. If you distribute good profit, you have done good, then more deposits will come to you in the market. If you don't distribute good profit, you are not performing good, your performance is low, so people will withdraw their deposits from you and go to other Islamic banks that give better. Next, we value justice over consent. I gave you the example of closing the gap in conventional leasing that is done in the United States. And I think similarly is done in Canada, I suppose. I'm not sure. But in the States, I've seen these contracts. This closing gap condition is not acceptable in Sharia. And if it is not acceptable, uh, we uh, we remove it even if you agree to it. Even if it is consensual, we don't accept it. We don't allow it. The interest-based loan is also a consensual contract, but yet we say interest is not acceptable, is prohibited, and it is unjust, and we overweight justice above consent, and we say your consent to the contract is invalid because the contract is unjust. We expand the meaning and scope of finance. Finance is usually defined as provision of credit or cash. Now we see provision of goods slash services slash assets with the counterpart paid later, with deferred counterpart. So this is then not only and goods, services, assets, and cash and credit, but with the counterpart later. So we add provision of goods, services, and assets to it, and this is more real because it's when you give a car and the price is paid later. Isn't that financing? It is definitely a financing. So we give a more realistic concept of what financing is. And we bring finance back to its basic role. Now, in all intermediary books of finance that you guys have studied, you were told that financial intermediation is a function of taking extra funds from people who have extra cash and providing it to people who are short on cash. These people could be economic units, could be corporations, or could be consumers. And the savers are usually income earner. So we take the extra cash that they have and provide it to the other. And of course, we keep the right of each. We give them back their money later, and we collect back our money from what we give. So financial intermediation is this function, and we bring it back to do this. Throughout, as we will notice in the coming 2-3 lectures, we will notice that the finance sectors and banks have really driven away from this function. They started trading debts, trading financial instruments, and making profit from them more than financial intermediation. So we bring the financial sector to be a financial intermediation sector only, without doing these other functions that are not non-productive function, do not produce in the meaning of goods, real goods and services that benefit a human being. I think this is the last one, or the one before last. Okay, the last slide is Islamic finance is in fact a universal reform of finance. It's finance for the real market. The last book I published with the help of some of my students here in Istanbul Zaim University, They were all PhD students. We called it uh, toward a new theory of finance. And this new theory of finance, we believe it is Islamic finance because it is finance for the real economy, for the real market. For finance that helps people produce more and exchange more, not finance that transfers wealth from one to the other. Thank you very much. With this, we close our today, and I hope that you guys benefited. Please read these, and always I suggest to you download these slides. It's okay. I think I didn't put even any slide of copyright. There is no copyright. Okay, so use them to your benefit and make the homework is part of the commitment to this course is to make the homework and email it to me always. Let's deal basically on the email. I'll send you each week. I will send you the slides of that lecture before time, inshallah. And I can do it even a day before. Thank you very much. We have 6, 7 minutes maybe, and we can, if you have any questions, thank you for the hands that clapped hand. Thank you for that. But anyway, let's go for questions now, quick questions, if you have any questions. And I suppose you must have a lot. Okay. Any question?
Yes, Brother Ziad, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yes,
Assalamu
please
alaikum.
regulate the questions. Yes.
Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan for the presentation. It was very beneficial. I guess I had one question. You mentioned that like Bitcoin and like those cryptocurrencies don't qualify as money because of under Islamic law, because of certain conditions. My question is twofold. What are those conditions? If you could maybe summarize them. And secondly, uh, can you apply that condition to like the US dollar? Like, uh, does the dollar that we use today also not qualify as money under that Islamic law? Thank you.
The dollar qualifies, and Bitcoin, and it's like from this angle that not the one that represents each unit in it represent a dollar deposited physically in certain depositee, or could be not dollar, could be other than dollar. I mean euro or Great Britain pound or any other yuan or any other currency, but physically deposited and represent that much only. So Bitcoin and its like that are virtual. You see, essentially, money at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was had intrinsic value. Intrinsic value may vary, and it varied at the time of the Prophet and after his time also. That's okay. That's not an issue. And but when we have fiat money, the only way that makes it money is the commitment of the government that it is committed to force it on everybody in that economy. So today, for instance, the Turkish lira or the Syrian lira or the dollar or the Great Britain pound or the euro is forced by law on everybody in that economy. In a sense, it represents a debt on that economy. You can buy from anyone in UK, and by law, he is required to accept your pound when you give him pound. whether deposit in a bank transfer or whatnot, يعني with all the way we deal with it. Now, these cryptocurrencies don't have this feature. This is the condition that makes it money today, because the first condition doesn't exist anyway, which is the intrinsic value. So the force of the law on everyone, not the acceptance. There are groups accept it, groups who deal with it accept it, but outside this group, if you come to a seller of potato, you cannot force it on him. And any day, company, one of the Amazon, suppose, will say, I won't accept Bitcoin anymore. It is at its choice, not the law. Okay. Yeah, we can accommodate a couple of other questions quickly.
Brother Muhammad, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Doctor, Jazakallah khair. I have a question about the very first principle you were talking about, property or earning by ownership. You talked about you can't sell something or earn without having an added value or creating an added value. Can we do the same for money and at the same time not be considered interest? Let's say, for example, I have $50 and you need $50. So I created an added value. I don't need them, but you need them. Can I sell you the $50 for $100 and without being considered interest?
No, it cannot be other than interest, because the $50 in my pocket is exactly equal to the $50 that were in your pocket. They have not added the value. There's no added value here. It's true that when you give a loan, you benefit the other guy, but this benefit is not an added value. Rather, it is an expanded freedom of action. I don't have a $50 in my pocket, so I cannot go and buy ice cream. If I have $50 in my pocket, I can go and buy ice cream. You give me freedom of action. You don't give me by the contract, the loan contract. We did not create added value. It's the same $50. In my pocket is 50, and it was in your pocket again 50. And you have, instead of it in your account, $50 then on me, debt on me. So there's no added value here. A loan contract creates debt, and the debt does not carry any added value. So it cannot be you sell me $100 and I sell you back 110, or give you a price 100. Even if you call it sale, it doesn't matter really, because it does not create, a loan does not create added value. It creates a debt, whereas a sale creates added value. Now, we didn't say that the loan is something that is not helpful. It is helpful in its totality. And it is helpful, yes, because it gives me more freedom of action. And in fact, it restricts your freedom. You had $200 and you gave me 100 as a loan. Now you are able to go in the market and have a choice of action only to the extent of 100. Before that, you had the freedom to go to the up to 200. Now you restrict your freedom, and I increased my freedom by that. So this is really, do you want to sell freedom? Freedom is not usufruct. Usufruct is something that is true, it's not material, but it is quasi-material. I am driving the car for the whole month. This is usufruct. But here it's not an issue of usufruct. It's an issue of freedom. I expand my freedom in the market with this ability, with this loan. Yes, that is why the Prophet ﷺ said that a loan is rewarded by God. And also, that is why in Islamic jurisprudence throughout the centuries, since day one, when they started talking about fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, since Imam Abu Hanifa and even before him, maybe 50 years before him, when Muhammad ibn Shihab and Al-Hasan al-Basri were kind of great scholars explaining things to people, they noticed that a loan falls in the category of benevolent contracts, is similar in a sense to charity, similar to gift, but it has a condition of return back after some time. So I give you the benefit of freedom for it for that period, and then you return it to me later. But gift is not returnable, and charity is not returnable, but it falls in that category. Okay, thank you. Last question, and I need the time is now. Khalas.
Yeah, Brother Naveed, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Doctor, I want to take you back to the slide about realism, quoting you. Removal of objects that do not reproduce real wealth from finance transactions. And one of the things that you mentioned in it, along with options and futures, was indexes. So I'm not aware of that indexes are actually bought and sold, because I know options are bought and sold, futures are bought and sold. But are indexes really bought and sold? They're just a measure of the market cap. And
No,
if,
they
yeah,
are actually bought and sold. You can click on the market through any broker in New York and buy index units of Dow Jones index.
yeah, then are you talking about index funds then, or are you talking about indexes?
No, not index fund. Indexed fund is a fund that buys shares to imitate the index. For
Right.
instance, Dow Jones, if they tell you Dow Jones indexed fund, we buy the same 30 shares in the same weight, in the same proportions as it is in the index. This is indexed fund. Indexed fund is a real thing, not a fictitious thing. Whereas indices is fiction, complete fiction,
Right.
nothing else. But
Okay.
unfortunately, they are traded. Not
Okay.
only in New York, they are traded in Malaysia also,
Right. Which actually
unfortunately,
answers my
and
second
in
part also.
Istanbul, and in
Yeah.
Frankfurt, and in Tokyo.
Thank you
Okay,
for that. Because yeah, I had a second part which was about ETF, but you already answered that. Because you're okay with index funds, then you would be okay with ETFs also, I guess.
yeah, I mean there are ETFs that are real ETF or
Right.
similar to that.
Perfect. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, thank you. I thank the organizer, the Dawah organization, and inshallah see you next week. And of course, we will be in contact with the DC and with the Sister Hiba, maybe from time to time in between. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair for attending. Inshallah, I will be sharing the slides, the recording, and the homework, and you can send them back to the doctor, inshallah. If you have any questions, you can put them on the question and answer chat, and that's all, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. See you next week.
Wait a minute, Sister Hiba. Have you not uploaded already the guidelines, the samples?
No, the
And
sample, they have already the sample and the syllabus, but not yet the slides. Do you want me to
no,
start sharing them before the lecture
yes,
or
please.
after the lecture?
I prefer that you upload them before the lecture, and it might be fine يعني if each one opens his own computer or device and check as we go in this, inshallah. That's fine with me.
Of course. Okay.
Better upload them before the time of the class.
Okay, inshallah. Of course.
طيب يلا السلام عليكم.
جزاكم الله خير, doctor. Thank you so much for
بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم. في أمان الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.